My dear brothers and sisters, throughout our lives, we hear many of the beautiful names of Allah. These names are not simply words that we repeat, they are doors. Every name opens a door to understanding something deeper about our Creator. And when a person truly begins to reflect on these names, something changes inside the heart. The heart begins to soften. The heart begins to feel connected, and slowly the heart begins to understand what it means to truly love Allah. But loving Allah is not like the love people often talk about in this world. When human beings say the words, I love you, those words can mean many different things. Sometimes they mean sincerity, sometimes they mean loyalty, but sometimes they mean something very different. Sometimes they mean, I want something from you. Sometimes they mean, I want to benefit from you. And sometimes those words are spoken without any true love behind them at all. You may have seen this in life. A young man may walk up to a young woman and say, I love you. But in reality, he may not love her. He may simply want something from her. His words sound beautiful, but the intention behind them is not sincere. This is why human love can sometimes be confusing. But when we speak about loving Allah, it is something completely different. When a person truly loves Allah, that love truly loves Allah, that love changes the way they speak. Love changes the way they treat others. Love changes the way they make decisions. Because when you truly love someone, you do not want to hurt them. You do not want to disappoint them. You do not want to disrespect them. And you become careful with your actions because you care about how your actions affect the one you love. And even among human beings, when you truly care about someone, you choose your words carefully. If a friend of yours makes a mistake, you do not rush to humiliate them. You do not expose their faults. Instead, you try to guide them gently. You might say something like, my brother, I noticed something that worried me. I care about you, and I don't want to see you harmed by this choice. Or you might say, my sister, I hope you don't mind me mentioning something. I say this because I want good for you. You see, when love is real, correction becomes gentle, advice becomes sincere, and guidance becomes compassionate. But when there is no love, people simply walk away. They see someone doing wrong and they say, it's not my problem. They witness harm and they say, why should I care? But Islam teaches us something different. Islam teaches us that believers care about each other. If we see someone struggling, we do not simply ignore it. Maybe we cannot change the situation with our hands. Maybe we cannot speak directly. But at the very least, we can raise our hands in dua. We can say, Ya Allah, guide this person. Ya Allah, soften their heart. Ya Allah, show them the path that leads to goodness. This is the mercy that believers carry within their hearts. And when we begin to understand the names of Allah, we begin to understand why. Because one of the most powerful names of Allah is Al-Wadud. Al-Wadud means the most loving. Think about that for a moment. Allah is not only merciful, Allah is not only forgiving, Allah is also deeply loving toward His creation, and the love of Allah is not like the love of human beings. Human love can change, human love can fade, human love can disappear. But the love of Allah is constant. Allah loves His creation more than any parent could ever love their child. Sometimes people think their parents love them more than anyone else in the world. And indeed, parental love is one of the most powerful forms of love that exists among human beings. But even that love cannot compare to the love that Allah has for His servants. If a person truly understood how much Allah loves them, they would never lose hope in His mercy, no matter what mistake they made, no matter how far they drifted, no matter how many sins they carried, because they would know that the door of Allah's mercy is always open. But at the same time, if a person truly understood the seriousness of Allah's punishment, they would also become careful about their actions. They would not want to disobey Him. They would not want to rebel against Him. And this balance creates something very powerful within the believer. It creates taqwa. Taqwa is often translated as fear of Allah, but the deeper meaning is something more beautiful. Taqwa is a living awareness of Allah. It is a consciousness that stays with you wherever you go. It is the feeling that Allah sees you, that Allah hears you, that Allah knows your intentions. And when that awareness lives inside your heart, it becomes like a protective shield between you and sin. You begin to think before you act. You begin to reflect before you speak. You begin to ask yourself, will this action please Allah? Or will this action displease Him? And suddenly your entire life begins to transform. But there is something that often prevents us from recognizing Allah's love, and that is the way we focus on our hardships. Sometimes in life we face difficulties, we face loss, we face illness, we face financial struggles, and when those things happen, the human mind often begins to focus only on what was taken away. We forget everything else that Allah has given us. For example, imagine a person who loses their job. Suddenly they begin to feel that Allah does not love them. They say, if Allah loved me, this would not have happened. Another person may face illness, and they say, if Allah loved me, I would not be sick. Another person loses someone dear to them, and they begin to question Allah's mercy. But when we think this way, we forget something very important. Even if Allah took 5 things away from you, He has still given you thousands of blessings. Your eyes are a blessing. Your breath is a blessing. Your heartbeat is a blessing. The food you eat is a blessing. The air you breathe is a blessing. Even the fact that you are alive right now is a blessing beyond measure. Imagine if Allah charged you for every heartbeat. Just imagine that. Every single beat of your heart costing you 1 penny. Do you know how many times your heart beats every day? Tens of thousands of times. You would become bankrupt almost instantly. But Allah gives you this gift freely. Your heart beats without you even asking it to. Your lungs breathe without your command. Your body functions in ways that you cannot even control. And yet we sometimes forget these blessings because we focus on the few things that went wrong. But Allah reminds us in the Quran that if He punished people immediately for every sin they committed, nothing would remain on this earth. Every single human being would have already been destroyed. But instead, Allah gives us chance after chance, opportunity after opportunity, mercy after mercy. Your parents may give you a few chances before they lose patience. Your friends may forgive you a few times before they walk away. But Allah continues giving chances again and again. There is no fixed number. The door of repentance remains open for as long as a person is alive, until the moment when the soul reaches the throat. That is the moment when repentance is no longer accepted. But until that moment arrives, the mercy of Allah remains open. And that is why we must never delay turning back to Him, because none of us know when our final moment will arrive. None of us know when our final breath will be taken. Life can end in an instant. A person may wake up in the morning thinking they have many years ahead of them, but by evening, their story may already be over. That is why the wise person does not wait. They do not say, I will change later. I will repent later. I will pray later, because later is never guaranteed. The wise person turns back to Allah today. They repair their relationship with Him today. They seek forgiveness today. And every time a servant turns back to Allah, something incredible happens. Allah becomes pleased, so pleased that He mentions that servant among the angels. Imagine that moment. A human being full of flaws and mistakes, raising their hands and saying, Ya Allah, forgive me. And Allah tells the angels, look at my servant. He has returned to me. That is the love of Al-Wadud. That is the mercy that surrounds every believer who sincerely seeks forgiveness. My dear brothers and sisters, when a believer begins to understand the love of Allah, something else naturally begins to grow within the heart. That understanding leads to trust, and that trust leads to surrender. Because when you truly believe that Allah loves you, and when you truly believe that Allah knows you better than you know yourself, then you begin to accept something powerful, that whatever Allah decrees carries wisdom. Even when that wisdom is not immediately visible to us, this is where another beautiful name of Allah comes into our lives. Allah is Al-Hakim, the all-wise, the one whose knowledge is complete, the one whose decisions are never random. the one who understands every consequence of every action in every moment across every generation. Human beings often struggle with this idea. We like to understand everything before we accept it. We like to analyze every rule before we follow it. We want explanations before obedience, but faith sometimes asks us to trust before we fully understand. Not blind trust, but trust based on the recognition that all's knowledge is infinite while ours is extremely limited. Think about how small our understanding really is. We do not even know what will happen tomorrow. We do not know what will happen in the next hour. We do not know what conversation might change our life tomorrow. We do not know which decision today might shape our entire future. But Allah knows. Allah sees the entire picture. And that is why, when Allah gives guidance, that guidance carries wisdom far beyond what we can immediately see. A believer understands this. A believer recognizes that when Allah commands something, it is not because Allah benefits from our obedience. Allah does not need our worship. Rather, we benefit from obedience. We benefit from the structure, the discipline, and the protection that Allah's guidance brings into our lives. This becomes very clear when we look at acts of worship like Salah. When Allah commands us to pray 5 times a day, some people ask why. They ask, what is the benefit? But the truth is, the benefits are countless. Spiritually, Salah reconnects the heart to its creator. Emotionally, Salah reminds the believer that no matter how chaotic life becomes, there is always a moment where they stand before Allah. Physically, Salah moves the body, stretches the muscles, and regulates breathing. Psychologically, Salah resets the mind. But even if we did not understand any of those benefits, the believer still recognizes that Allah's command itself carries wisdom, because Allah sees what we cannot see. Even modern science sometimes discovers the wisdom of Islamic practices centuries after they were taught. For example, the importance of waking early. Today, many health experts say that waking early improves productivity, improves mental clarity, and improves physical health. But Muslims were taught the importance of early mornings more than 1400 years ago. The Prophets of Allah lived life that revolved around discipline in time. Sleeping early, waking, beginning the day with remembrance of Allah. These habits were not random. They were part of a lifestyle designed to bring balance to the human being. Yet sometimes people follow trends in society without questioning them, while questioning the guidance that came from Allah. A person may stay awake until 2 or 3 in the morning, watching shows, scrolling endlessly through their phone, or following sports games across the world. But when it comes time for far prayer, suddenly it becomes difficult. Suddenly the body feels heavy. Suddenly the mind says, maybe tomorrow. But the believer begins to see these patterns differently. They begin to realize that discipline is not restriction. This is protection. It protects your time. It protects your health. It protects your soul. Another example is fasting. For centuries, Muslims fasted during Ramadan and also practiced voluntary fasting throughout the year. Many people did not fully understand the physical benefits of fasting. But today, medical research increasingly highlights how fasting can support metabolism, improve digestion, and even help regulate certain bodily processes. What Islam taught as spiritual discipline now appears in health programs and documentaries, yet the believer does not fast simply because science confirms its benefits. The believer fasts because Allah commanded it, and because fasting trains the heart. It teaches patience, it teaches self-control, it teaches empathy for those who have less. It reminds us that our desires do not control us. We control our desires. This is one of the greatest forms of freedom, because modern society often presents freedom as the ability to do whatever we want. But in reality, unlimited desire often becomes a form of slavery. A person becomes enslaved to food, enslaved to entertainment, enslaved to attention, enslaved to approval from others. Islam teaches a different form of freedom. Freedom through discipline, freedom through self-control, freedom through submission to Allah alone. Because when you submit to Allah, you are no longer controlled by the expectations of people. You begin to worry less about what others think, and you begin to care more about what Allah knows. Many people live their entire lives trapped in the fear of other people's opinions. They hesitate to do what is right because they worry about criticism. They hesitate to practice their faith openly because they worry about judgment. They hesitate to stand for truth because they worry about rejection. But the believer begins to understand something powerful. When your relationship with Allah becomes strong, the opinions of people become much smaller. You still treat people with respect. You still show kindness and compassion, but you no longer allow their approval to determine your obedience to Allah. Because pleasing people at the cost of displeasing Allah will never bring peace. And pleasing Allah often brings a deeper form of peace, even when others do not understand your choices. This also connects to another aspect of Allah's wisdom. Sometimes Allah gives us rules that appear simple, but they protect us in ways we may not realize. Take modesty, for example. Every society has some form of dress expectations. Schools have dress codes, workplaces have dress codes, even social events have expectations about appearance. Yet when Islam speaks about modesty, some people react as if it is an unreasonable restriction. But modesty was never meant to suppress dignity. It was meant to protect dignity. It was meant to protect both men and women from reducing themselves to objects of attention. And modesty is not only about clothing, it is about character, it is about how we speak, it is about how we behave, it is about the boundaries we maintain in our interactions. Islam does not place responsibility only on women. Men are also commanded to lower their gaze. Men are also commanded to behave with respect. Men are also accountable for their conduct, because morality is not a one-sided responsibility. It is a shared responsibility. When societies begin to ignore these boundaries, confusion increases. Relationships become unstable, trust becomes fragile, and emotional harm becomes widespread. But when people follow the guidance of Allah, they create a culture of respect, a culture of dignity, a culture where people are valued for their character rather than their appearance. Another area where people sometimes question Islamic practice is the use of Arabic in prayer. Some new Muslims or young Muslims ask why Salah must be performed in Arabic. They wonder why they cannot simply pray in their own language. But here again, we see the wisdom of Allah. Supplication can be made in any language. A person can call upon Allah in English, Urdu, Arabic, or any other language. Allah understands every language. Allah understands every whisper of the heart. But the formal structure of Salah is preserved in Arabic for a very powerful reason. It protects the Quran. Return. Throughout history, many scriptures were translated, interpreted, and rewritten so many times that debates arose about their original wording. People wondered which version was authentic, which translation was accurate, which manuscript preserved the original message. But the Quran remains unchanged. A Muslim in Indonesia recites the same Quran as a Muslim in Africa. A Muslim in Turkey recites the same Quran as a Muslim in South America. The words are identical. The message is identical. This preservation exists because millions of Muslims memorize the Quran. Even people who do not speak Arabic memorize chapters of the Quran. They carry those words within their hearts, and every time they pray, they participate in preserving the message of Allah. This is not simply tradition. It is a living system of protection that has continued for generations. It is another example of the wisdom of Allah. Sometimes what appears difficult at first carries tremendous benefit later. And when a believer begins to recognize these patterns, their relationship with Allah's guidance becomes stronger. They begin to trust that every command carries purpose, every prohibition carries protection, every test carries wisdom. They stop asking only, why must I do this? And instead they begin to ask, what might Allah be protecting me from? Because sometimes the things we desire the most are the very things that could harm us the most. And sometimes the things that feel difficult in the moment become the greatest blessings in the long run. Believer learns patience. The believer learns humility. The believer learns to walk through life with trust in Allah's wisdom, even when the full picture is not visible yet.